Welcome in everybody to this live edition of the Scarlet Huron podcast as Nebraska ball stays undefeated 14-0 following their win over number 9 Michigan State 58-56. Guys, there's a ton to say, but at the same time there's nothing to say because at the end of the day, this program was 50 something preseason in the Ken Palm. They were listed as a bubble team around a lot of areas. And frankly, even though they started 12-0, 13-0 with the, road win over Illinois and the big win against Wisconsin, a lot of people considered this team to be a feel-good story. And guys, let's be honest, feel-good story no more, as Nebraska has announced itself as number 1 legitimate, number 2 a Big 10 title contender, and as we sit here right now, guys, Nebraska tied for the lead in the Big Ten. Actually, they might be the only they might lead the Big Ten and actually I think Michigan's 3-0. So take that back a little bit. But Nebraska announces itself as an extended version of a national title contender. And we talked about it in the Michigan State preview for those that listened. Nebraska has found a way to maximize everything that they have on the roster, and they have done. And you zoom out, and we'll get into the macros of it, later on, I'm sure, as that in and of itself is its own national storyline of what the program was and what it's turned into. But you look at it and you ask yourself, how is it even possible that Nebraska basketball over the first 3 years of the Hoiberg tenure had the worst record in program history over the first 3 years of the Hoiberg tenure? And it has now evolved into what is basically more or less almost indisputable at this point, the best first half of the season that Nebraska basketball has ever endured. And sometimes I think this is a lesson that a lot of the times the knee jerk reaction isn't the best reaction. And it doesn't always work out this way. There are plenty of examples, just off the top of my head, you look at Fred Hoiberg, or not Fred Hoiberg, but Scott Frost, and extending him and to him taking the pay cut and trying and all that kind of stuff. It sometimes it doesn't work. In the case of Fred Hoiberg, it did. And all we can do tonight is celebrate. I turned to a lot of the guys that I was at the bar after the game and just said, guys, like, this is while I was still relatively sober, thankfully, but you look around and you say there have been people that have rooted for this program for 60, 70 years, and they remember the 1960s when Nebraska basketball was a top 10 team, and they've been waiting year after year after year to experience something like this. And I told my youngest brother, who's still attending the University of Nebraska, and said, man, look around and just soak it in, because there have been people that have lived lifetimes without getting to experience this. And you get to experience it while you're in college. It's unbelievable. It's truly, not even the biggest optimist, Mike, could have thought that this is where they'd be 14 games into the season, but they're going to be a top 10 team on Monday. There's so much to say, but at the same time, I'm left speechless. So I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, um, really is speechless. It's like it's really funny. Like obviously I've picked against the Huskers a lot this year, and shame on me. And it's really funny too because like you talk about, Blake, there's people that have cheered for this team for a long time, and I remember even back in like high school before going to the university, I was always like, it'd be really cool if Nebraska was like a basketball school. Like, how cool would it be to pack, an arena and there's five guys? And obviously, growing up in Nebraska, nobody agrees with that. Everyone wants Nebraska football to be good. And, I obviously want the football team to succeed too. But, like, seeing the reaction and the fan support, like, and Fred even said it on I mean, for those of you that didn't get to watch the game on TV and were fortunate enough to be in the arena, they had, the immediate post game with the media for Fred while he was still courtside, and he talked about it. He's like they asked him about the fans and what they did. And he's like, that's great and all, and you see it for a top 15 matchup, but what you guys don't talk about is sold out for North Dakota, sold out for New Hampshire, like the fan support and the absolute desire for just a successful team. I think, and that's a great thing about Husker fans in general. It doesn't matter what sport it is. Like, you look at, women's volleyball, obviously, like, this is a volleyball school. Nebraska volleyball is one of one, but it's every major athletics. Like, if there's any hint of success, Husker fans are out there to support the team, and just to see that come out for the basketball squad is awesome. I can't imagine what PBA had to be like tonight. Love to see the students and the fans get to storm the court. I know that can kind of be a hot button issue, but I think it seemed like it was pretty safe from what I saw on TV. It was funny listening to the players with Rink and Jamarcus kind of saying like, we're done with that now. Like we're 13th. Like, we shouldn't be storming the court anymore. We should expect to win these games. Um, but even Izzo touched on it. They asked him about it. They asked him about it in the post game, and he even mentioned like when you're building a program, like you can say you were expected to win these games. They're favored coming into it, but like this isn't something that Nebraska fans as a in general have like experienced as a top 15 matchup, a massive win at home. So to see the program on the rise, like, and I don't want to talk too early and bite project the future or anything, but it really does feel that way. Like it feels like a program on the rise. It feels like we took the lumps through the first three obviously years of the Hoiberg tenure, but even a couple after that, like just figuring out what it takes to succeed. Oh my God, can't talk. Figuring out what it takes to succeed in the Big Ten and seeing how he's went about forming the roster that a still conforms to what his style of basketball looks like, but B can be successful in Big Ten play has really been interesting to see over the last handful of years.
And talking about the court storm thing, I know there's some, I guess I would say controversy. That's not the right word, but there's some questions as to, Nebraska's storming the court, blah, blah, blah. But, and they were a favorite, which, we kind of talked about. But you know what? The way I look at it is this was the fan base's first chance to celebrate with the team. I mean, you look at the Illinois game, Nebraska didn't have a chance. I mean, we celebrated with each other, right? I'm sure there were a lot of tweets that went in and celebrated, but this was the first chance, metaphorically and literally, obviously, it turns out, for Nebraska to celebrate, the Nebraska ball fans to celebrate with the team itself. And, I, were we favorites? Yes. Were we supposed to technically win the game? Yes. But this isn't a program that's used to moments like this. And that, that's kind of speaking the obvious, but, you know, these are moments that we just, and I go back to, you just have to celebrate it. You have to soak this in. You have to live it. You have to look around, hug somebody you don't know, kiss your wife or girlfriend and don't tell them why. And just, I mean, guys, this doesn't seem real. Like we tweeted it, but like, don't pinch us. We don't want to wake up. It's impossible to fathom that this is where we're at. Nebraska basketball is going to be a top 10 team on Monday afternoon when the next rankings come out. It's not even the biggest optimist in the world could have imagined that 14 games in, this is where we'd be. Not, I mean, nobody, and I mean nobody thought that this is something that they could be. And again, we kind of talked about it. We're kind of mixing the recordings because we did one before and one after. So I don't even really remember what we talked about between the two. But I want to emphasize as well that Nebraska basketball has announced their arrival on the national scene. They're not just a feel good story anymore, guys. This team is a legitimate Big Ten title contender. This team is a legitimate, outside national title contender if they continue to play the way that they do. And the matter of fact, like, guys, zoom out and look at the game in its entirety. Price Sanford played a total of 21 minutes and fouled out of the game at the end of the game. I mean, like, Nebraska did it with their leading scorer only playing 21 minutes and only playing 6 minutes in the first half. It's had you told anybody that pregame, they just said, "Oh wow, Nebraska probably gets throttled." They're because it goes without saying at that point, Nebraska's gonna have to win with defense, and they've done it. And Nebraska, they've proven at the Pentagon they can win by scoring 105. They've proven they can win ugly by beating Michigan State 58-56. And guys, this is not a Michigan State team that's poor offensively. I mean, they're top 40 in the country in offensive efficiency. But what does Nebraska do? They absolutely play to the crowd. And Mike mentioned it, and I need to make sure I cover it as well. This crowd played a huge, huge, huge role in the outcome of this game. And there were a lot of sections that treated this as a no-sit Sunday. I know the sideline opposite the benches seemed to be standing the entire game, and a lot of others did as well. And this I mean, I'm curious to see what you guys think, but as we kind of get into that part of it, but to me, to me, this was the most electric crowd I've ever seen in Pinnacle Bank Arena, and you could just sense that the crowd wanted this as bad as the players did, and that's again the coolest thing about this program is that the fan base's connection with the team is so close. For a team that's never really had success and a program that's never really had success, the fan to team connection is very, very special, Mike.
And it kind of goes back to, I mean, like you said, we had one recording earlier, so I might be repeating myself, but like the people that stick around for horrible times, just to see, like it's classic, right? America loves an underdog, and that's why Nebraska is like the feel good story, and you see that online a lot. And you know what, Blake, you're right. Like they're not just a feel good story anymore. You know, they announce themselves on the national stage, but at the same time, it really is still a feel good story. Like I feel amazing. You know, we watched some horrible, horrible basketball. You know, some of those Tim Miles teams were pretty good. He obviously got us to the tournament, but like some of those teams were terrible, Blake. And it was every game there'd be a 7 minute scoring drought where the ball would stick on the off. Like I remember it clear as day, right? And just hoping that one day we'd have a great team, and then obviously we go through that and you get to the Fred Hoiberg, and we already touched on his first 3 years and how horrible they were. It's just like this team is just never going to make it. So to be here in this position, it absolutely is a feel good story. I think um, Fred Hoiberg has to be, you know, the number one contender right now for Coach of the Year. Obviously, Vanderbilt, and they're not historically very good. They're on an absolutely historic season themselves. We already touched on, Michigan is like having a historic season. I think I saw they have the second highest net rating in the Ken Palm era or something like that. Like they're just throttling teams. They throttled USC tonight by 30 on the road. So like that's all well and good. But for a team and a program that has never seen this level of, well, I shouldn't say never, because obviously the Danny Nee teams in the 90s, but that's 30 years ago, guys. Like you got to realize a lot of the people on this live probably weren't alive back then, right? Like that is for all intents and purposes uncharted territory. So to see them get to these heights now, it is really really speechless, and I'm glad that it is really funny, Blake. Like we talked about doing a podcast for so long or whatever, and not to make this about us, but it is just really funny that like we talked about doing it for so long, went through the first 3 years of Fred Hoy, and we're like, whatever, whatever. Finally, just pulled the trigger on it, and we happened to do it at the right time to catch like the biggest come up and the biggest groundswell in support, and just to see the fan support show up, and to be a part of that, and like have this, like we're doing a live with a bunch of Nebraska basketball fans right now, and people are actually tuning in, like, and just having this community that we've somehow managed to bring together. Because like I said, growing up, if you say like you're a Nebraska basketball fan, that's not a thing. Kids from my high schools, like we got Duke fans, we got UNC fans, we got fans of Kansas, we got fans of all these other teams, because who the hell wants to cheer for a perennial loser in Nebraska? But there are a lot of people that like that. And when you finally get your chance in the spotlight and to see this team reach out and take it in an absolute rock fight like they did, um, couldn't be happier. Hopefully they can obviously turn, like, quick turnaround. They play in Ohio State on Monday. You had a lot of dudes play a lot, like, significant minutes. Rink Mass played 35 and a half minutes in this one. That dude's going to get that dude in an ice bath ASAP. Let him rest up. Like, Jamarcus Lawrence played 32 and a half minutes. Braden Frager off the bench played like 30 minutes. Like, it's going to be a tough comeback, but let's just enjoy the night, because what are the odds that we would ever see a 14-0 Nebraska with two massive wins against Illinois and Michigan State? And it's funny saying that, and you won't even hear me say Creighton's a massive win coming into the season. That was like, circle that date, right? But here we sit, and that's a footnote at this point because of what this team has done in the position they've put themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's so much to talk about, but at the same time, you're left speechless. I mean, hell, my voice is gone. I mean, like that was the hard part about being like a fan podcast is like you you want to cheer, but you got to try to save your voice for stuff like this. So you try to like toe the line a little bit if you can, but um, If you want to speak, we're going to start to transition into the fan speaking portion. So if you want to speak, just make sure to hit the request button. We'll kind of get to you guys as efficient and quickly as we can. We don't want to do this for too long because we'll obviously post it to our feed tomorrow. But if you want to speak, please request. We want to hear from anybody and everybody. This is a celebration. So if you just want to smile and share your thoughts with everybody, just hit request and we'll get to you. First and foremost, we have follower number like 2 or something, I think it was. Evan Weekland has been with us forever. Evan, you've been added as a speaker. Just make sure to unmute your mic. What do you think of number 13 Nebraska ball's 14-0 start and unbelievable win over number 9 Michigan State?
Yeah, guys. I mean, I even took notes because I just have way too many things that I want to say, and I want to make sure I'm on track and quick, so that way you can move on to the next thing. Because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But first of all, starting this podcast, you guys caught lightning in a bottle. If I'm not, mistaken. Clearly, 3 years ago, you guys started this, and all of a sudden, we're just killing it. So, whatever you guys are doing, keep on doing it. Really appreciate that. Um, Second of all, I mean, like I was going to games when we were 7-20, and like I would have to choose strategically when to go watch games, so that way I wouldn't leave with a loss, which is insane. Number two, coach of the year. Fred Hoiberger is coach of the year, and it will take quite a bit for him to lose that, in my opinion. Third, send some NIL money to basketball, please, for the love of God. After seeing what Fred Hoiberg has done, how could you not? And then number four is the last one I'm going to end on because I don't want to be too long. But I went to a bar to watch this game tonight simply because, I mean, the tickets were a little bit too expensive. I'll be real. Um, but I went to a bar and there were literally Creighton fans that were there to root for Michigan State against us. And I mean, I couldn't imagine being that sad that you have to do that. But you know what? That's why it's screw the Jays forever. With that said, go Big Red. I'll kick it back over to you guys, and I want to hear your thoughts. Appreciate you as always. Thanks.
Appreciate it, Evan. And like we talked about, Evan has been with the podcast literally, I think, before we reached 10 followers. So it's historic stuff that he bought into, if you will. We were, quite frankly, a nobody, but it's amazing what we've been able to do. We say this every time this kind of thing gets brought up. Mike would agree. We did this to literally build a Nebraska basketball family, if you will, because and Mike talked about it earlier. If you are a Nebraska basketball fan or you labeled yourself as that going back to even 4 or 5 years ago, you were laughed at. You said, "Why the hell are you rooting for that team? Because you should either go root for Creighton or root for Nebraska football or whatever." But there are so many people out there that have rooted for this program for so long with nothing to show for it. And these are the kind of nights that those people deserve, right? Those people that sat through like Evan talked about, the 7-20, the 7-25, the Tim Miles disappointment after disappointment, the Copeland injury, right? The 2015 letdown when they were supposed to be an elite team. There are so many of those people out there that have waited so long for this moment. And I'm just so happy, obviously, first and foremost, for nobody more than the players. And that's really what this is about. But for the fan base to get to celebrate something like this, like Mike said, the fact that we get to celebrate this and share in this with all of you that are in here and all of you that if aren't in here that are listening on the live tomorrow on our podcast feed, it's just mind numbing. I can't believe there's so many facets to this that are unbelievable, Mike, that it just brings a tear to your eye. Where Nebraska basketball is undefeated, going to be a top 10 team, and they're 3-0 in the conference, and have just announced themselves to the national scene as a contender.
And it's really funny, like, and I know this isn't a unique experience, probably for probably anyone in here, right? But like after the game tonight, like getting texts from people that you're acquaintances with, you're friends with, like you don't talk too often. You get together every now and again. It's like massive win for the boys tonight. Like congrats. Like like the second people know you're a Nebraska basketball fan and they see this, like people are reaching out to you about it because I think a lot of people understand the absolute agony that is Nebraska basketball. So to have people reach out like that is awesome. I do want to touch on Evan's point about the Creighton fans. Like, what a miserable experience that must be. And it is really funny. Like, even when Nebraska was horrible, like I'll always cheer for Creighton to lose, but I'm not like going out wearing my Nebraska gear in Omaha, like cheering for whoever Creighton's playing. I'll do it at home, obviously, because I'm, screw the J-Skers, right? Screw the Jays. But I'm not like going out in public to. That's just weird. I'm gonna be honest. That's just weird. But to each their own. It is really incredible though to experience what we have. Like, and it just keeps coming back to it. Like we are going to have a top 10 Nebraska basketball team come next week. And frankly, you look at Ken Palm and the projections right now, and I don't think everything's been updated because there's a couple games left still. But like Ohio State has it as a 1 point game, and Indiana next week has it as a 2 point game. Both of those projected to be losses. But still, that's a coin flip. Like there's a very real possibility the Huskers can win one, if not both of those games. Like I said, this Monday turnaround is going to be tough with the travel and the rest the guys need. But this is also a veteran, experienced team. They got a bunch of old heads on this squad, and I think a lot of that showed, especially down the stretch. Like you think about after Braden Frager's tech and the run that Michigan State went on, and we've touched on it on a couple episodes now. Like this team punches back, and we saw that again in this one. But you just got to hope that this team's veteran and experienced enough to know what they need to do to get their bodies right. Because, like, frankly, Blake, after Ohio State, Indiana, like those two are projected losses. You have like Oregon at home. Oregon's not great. They've been playing better recently. Northwestern on the road. Obviously, they're not amazing. You got Washington at home. Like we have a string of winnable games here, and there's a real possibility if they win at Ohio State and win at Indiana that like we could get to like 20-0 before Michigan comes up. And again, it's like the unbridled optimism of Husker fans to be beaten down for years on end, and we finally get a glimmer of hope and take it absolutely to the next level and be like, well, why not just win the whole thing, right? And here we sit at 14-0, and I'm already being like, well, why not just go 20-0, right? But it is like a very real possibility. This team keeps finding ways to win. This team has proven that they can win in a multitude of ways, and they can beat anybody on their schedule at this point. And I'm just couldn't be happier for all the fans, for the players, obviously the coaches, to see all that hard work pay off.
Yeah, it's just amazing what this has become and everything that it is. Again, I feel so bad because our job, no, I mean it's not a job, but like our goal is to talk about the discourse of Nebraska basketball, and I'm truly just left speechless. There really is no word in the American Merriam-Webster dictionary that can really describe just the feeling that everybody's feeling right now. It's so far beyond unbelievable that it's a dream. Truthfully, doesn't even do it justice. Like it's more than that. This is like some sort of epiphany to the highest extent. It's I'm I'm just talking in circles. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. That said, okay, let's move into the next one. Chad Schroeder. Sorry, guys, we're going to try to get through these as quick as we can. I know there's a line of them. Chad, you've been at it as a speaker. What'd you think about Nebraska basketball's historic win tonight?
Hey, I won't keep it too long, but I want to thank you guys for all your work. First and foremost, it's almost like you're sort of willing the program forward, and it's awesome to see. Um, I want to give a couple shout outs to some guys that don't get as much credit as they deserve on the team. We always hear about Sam Horberg's hustle and rank mass, great play all around, and Sanford's shooting and this and that. But Jamarcus Lawrence, we're not here without him. He just keeps being that steady presence that scores enough points, makes the right plays, is really playing good defense, understands the scheme. So I just want to give him a shout out. And I also thought Kale did, even though he would probably like to have some free throws back and a couple wide open threes, it's nice having a guy like that, a Nebraska kid, to come in the game that you can trust to make plays. And I just want to thank you guys for your work, and let's keep rolling. It's gonna get bumpier. We're gonna lose a game or two probably that people don't expect, but everybody needs to stay on the same course here.
Yeah, thanks for that. And honestly, Blake, I do love Chad's message there at the end. Like we are gonna drop a game or two, and it sucks to like talk about that right now after a massive win, but it's always find that middle, right? And to touch on that, I listened to the post game presser with the players, and they touched on Braden and his tech and everything, and how to pick him up. And they, Rink's like, he's a ball of energy. Like you don't want to take that away from him, but at the same time, and again, it is with this like quick turnaround. Like you can't get too high, you can't ride these highs of emotions, because when that falls out from underneath you, like it's going to, that's how your season spirals. And I think this team is veteran enough that we probably won't see that. What Chad had to say about Jamarcus Lawrence in particular, like obviously his scoring, he's been a great 3-point shooter so far this year, but his defense, his the absolute intensity he brings on that end of the floor. Maybe I wasn't paying attention close enough a couple of years ago, but I think he's taken that end of the floor up another notch. And to have what seems like now between Sam Hoiberg, who has always been a great defender, but Jamarcus Lawrence is another great perimeter defender. And he does it without fouling, really. Like it's really, really great. He had one personal foul in this one, drew three of them. Um, to have two elite perimeter defenders, I know we talk about Big Ten play, and it's a bigs league, and you play in the paint all the time. But at the end of the day, you talk about like what wins games come March. It's always people talk about guard play. So to have two elite perimeter defenders that can help take that away from opponents, I think is going to be huge down the street. Like those are the type of players that can help you win any game if you have them, right? So love Chad giving a shout out to Jamarcus on that one, because he has been a huge factor, and I don't think he's necessarily gotten the attention he deserves.
Yeah, well, I mean, 100%. And when you look at Jamarcus Lawrence, especially in the context of this game, Mike, Jamarcus Lawrence went for 12 points in the entire game, 3 of 8 shooting, 1 of 4 from deep. A very, very, very critical 5 of 5 from the free throw line. As a matter of fact, Nebraska actually did very well at the free throw line. Sans Cale Jacobson's rough night there, but even Cale Jacobson had a plus minus of 0, right? And he had a pretty rough offensive game, I think, from what a lot of people would consider. But he missed a wide open three, which it is what it is. Obviously, water under the bridge when you win. But you look at the context again of Jamarcus Lawrence's his game, and he scored 10 points on 3 of 4 shooting, 1 of 2 from deep, 3 of 3 from the line in that first half when Price Sanford only played 6 minutes. And I think a lot of fans that were in the know and truly have followed this team as closely as they have, they saw Price Sanford get his second foul and immediately thought, oh my God, where is the offense going to come from now? And I tell you what, Jamarcus Lawrence and obviously Rink Mast, who went for 15 first half points on 5 of 9 from deep, they answered the bell, guys. They had 25 of Nebraska's 33 first half points that really kept them in the game because, I talked about it on the intro, but if you were going to tell me Price Sanford's going to play 6 minutes in the first half and fight foul trouble the whole game, I'd have told you there is no way Nebraska found a way to beat Michigan State. But again, mentioned it before, they've proven they can win in a shootout, 105-99 against Oklahoma, and they've proven that they can win a gritty defensive game without their leading scorer tonight against number 9 Michigan State 58-56. And it's this team is truly more of a team than I think any team that I've watched in my relatively short Nebraska basketball fandom in the last 15 years. They play so well together. They don't care who gets the credit. They don't care who makes the shot. They don't care about any of that. They just want to win. And I think it mirrors what the fans want. They just want to win. They don't care how it looks. They don't care who scores it. It doesn't matter. Just win. And that's 14 tries, Mike, 14 wins. So onward they go. We're going to add Barstool Skurs, good buddy of the podcast. We're actually heading to Indiana with him here in a couple days. So very excited about that. But my friend, welcome in. You are listed as a speaker. What do you think about tonight's historic win?
Yeah, Blake, I kind of like what you just said about nobody's gonna tell you that this is the most talented team in the world, but they can win shootouts, they can win, these clunkers of games, and I feel like that's just a trait that many teams don't have is where they just know how to win, right? I mean, last year I think this is comparable to the Michigan game last year, and obviously like last year's team wasn't near as talented as this team, but I mean we had not wide open shot, but we had shots that if we had made them, we win that game last year, and that's kind of what this felt like. And Rank Mass made the shot, and after airballing the previous shot, right? I mean, he just exudes confidence. Just threw one up there, and it landed, and uh, you know, it was one incredible moment. I've been to I was at the Wisconsin game, the Purdue game. I was at No Sit Sunday all those years ago. This environment topped all of those. You have to give a lot of credit to the fans. I mean, when Cooper missed that free throw, that was probably the loudest moment I've ever heard in a sporting event. I mean, it was just unreal, the environment that we put together without students in the building. So you got to give the fans a lot of credit. And then, like you said, like Price barely played in the first half, went a long stretch in the second half without playing, and we found a way. Like this team just continues to find a way. I mean, Illinois made shot after shot late in that game. A couple weeks ago to keep themselves in it, and Jamarcus Lawrence finds a way at the end of the game. Rank Mast and our defense finds a way at the end of this game, and at Oklahoma we just make three after three and we find a way to win that game. And I think that is something that you can kind of count on down the stretch. I always get a lot of comments that say this team won't win in March. I'm like, what makes you say that? Like, they just find ways to win. No matter what the game looks like, this team finds ways to win, and that's what I'm most impressed with. Is like we're talking about a Nebraska basketball team that just wins, right? Like when has that ever happened? Literally never. But this team just knows how to win, and I mean, like you said, I'm more than pumped to go to Indiana, go to Assembly Hall, and hopefully go see us take a game there. Really excited about that.
Yeah, this is, and I really like the point you mentioned about how they win, and I think we spend a lot of time as podcasters, commentators, whatever you want to call us. We're just fans, man. We just happen to have a mic in front of us. But I think we spend a lot of time trying to identify, what each individual team is. This is our third year doing it. We've been fans for, the better part of a decade and a half. But you spend a lot of time trying to identify what this team is. And again, I don't think you can pigeonhole this team, Mike, into an offensive stalwart. You can't really say they're a defensive stalwart. They're good on defense, but I don't it's so hard to pinpoint it, but I think what Barstool just said makes a ton of sense. Mike, their identity is very simply winning. 14-0 is evidence, and it doesn't matter how it looks, doesn't matter how they do it. They very simply win.
And we kind of like touched on that a little bit already. You think about, like you said, this one's like a rock fight, sub 60 from each team. And then you have Oklahoma, 105-99. You have the Illinois game on the road, mid 80s. That was a game of runs back and forth and back and forth. Like they've been through a wide variety of games now. Wide variety of paces, wide variety of performances, both shooting and on the defensive end, and they've managed to pull them all out. And I think a lot of that has to do with how old this team is. We talk about it a lot. Like this is a very old team. The Ken Palm has them as the 25th in D1 experience. You look at the guys that got minutes tonight. Our starters, a junior, a senior, a senior, and then off the bench we have a freshman, a junior, and a senior. Like these are guys that have been around college basketball a long time. And I think you're seeing that pay off. Like nothing really seems to phase this team. Fred talked about it, in the under four, they're down, they're in the team huddle. Nobody's dropping their head. There's eye contact. Everyone's focused. Everyone's ready to do their job. And I don't think this team doubts for a second that they can beat anybody. And shame on, fans like me who keep saying like they're going to regress eventually. Because if the team believes they can beat anybody, why can't they? Like these guys know better than any of us. They see what all the work they put in. They know how hard they've worked. They know who they got on the roster, who they got for each guy who's playing their role at the high level that they are right now. So, again, shame on me for doubting these guys up to this point. Again, I don't think anybody would blame you for doubting a 14-0 start, but the proof's in the pudding, and all they do is keep going out and putting out performances that make you go, wow, this team is an actual very good basketball team, and they find ways to win.
Yeah, it's been truly amazing, and like you said, it's a very interesting dichotomy because Nebraska fans, again, we keep talking about regression. They're going to fall back. They're going to come back to the mean. But the players don't feel that way. They don't think that. They don't say, "Oh yeah, no, we're 13-0. We're probably gonna do to lose." They don't think that. They say, "Screw that. 1-0 tonight. That's all that matters." And it's been obviously, reflected in that post game presser, which you mentioned. I haven't watched it myself yet. That's gonna be a long night, I think, to take notes and get everything corroborated before we record tomorrow for our real episode. But again, the team doesn't think like that. They don't look at it as a mean. They just win, man. And again, it's you try to put as many words into it to try to make it make sense, but the answer sometimes Occam's razor, right? The truth lies in the simplest, most straightforward answer. They win. So, Jacob Wright, we've added you as a speaker. Make sure to unmute your mic and let us know what you thought about tonight's, again, historic win over number 9 Michigan State.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Doing well, doing well. What do you think about the
Pretty
game tonight?
good, yeah.
I just want to say, come on here quick and just say the atmosphere. I've been going to Pinnacle Bank, last 5-6 years, and the atmosphere was incredible tonight. Glad the boys got a dub, but as we were saying earlier, I mean, a lot of people have touched on the subject. I don't. This team is kind of different in the past. I think they don't really care whose night it is. If it's J-Law's night, if it's Mass night, they all are. They all seems like the team camaraderie is there, on and off the court, and it's just kind of crazy how we were talking the other day, like the beginning of the Fred Hoiberg era. The amount of bye games we were losing. Like we were losing a lot more bye games than winning Big Ten games. Like people don't realize the Southern Utahs, the Western Illinois, the UC Riverside. Like we were losing to those programs, and now to see come Monday a single digit next to our name, like the weight, the I don't know, it's just crazy. So, yeah, that's all I got. Let me know what you guys think of that.
Yeah, and I think the most amazing part about it all, and I'm going to keep this one pretty short because it's pretty straightforward, but you look at what is happening around the country. Everybody's talking about Nebraska in the sense, again, feel good story. We kind of talked about it, not a feel good story anymore and things like that. But if you look at the further context of it, you look at Mark Byington at Vanderbilt and you say, okay, he's doing it at Vanderbilt. That's unbelievable. This, that, and the other. And 100%, I'm not discrediting that at all. But when you add the context that, again, Fred Hoiberg had the worst 3-year record at Nebraska basketball in this program's obviously not exactly lustrous history, it's absolutely, again, there's not a word for it. It's so unfathomable that you question if it's even real. Had you told me 4 years ago that after he finishes his third year and he's won a total of like 16 games at Nebraska over 3 years. It's like 16 and 80 or whatever the hell it was. And you would have told me, just hold tight. He's going to turn around. They'll be a top 10 team in 3 years. I'd have looked at you like you were the biggest idiot I've ever talked to in my life. But Mike, it's real. We're here. It's stunning. We're here. The turnaround has been nothing short of the most unbelievable thing a lot of people have maybe ever seen in college basketball history. And that's not hyperbole. That's real.
And it's funny. I know, like, it is like the classic thing that a lot of commentators are pointing out. It's like, oh, Indiana football is really good, and now Nebraska basketball is good. Like, what's going on? And honestly, it is kind of like two different scenarios. Though, like obviously, Indiana historically bad football team suddenly good. Nebraska historically bad basketball team suddenly good. So there's a similarity there. But you like look at what Kurt Signetti's done and like immediate turnaround, right? And like Blake just touched on, this is not an immediate turnaround for Fred Hoiberg whatsoever. We have taken our fair share of lumps. So to see them, stick through it and end up where we are now, again, like and Blake's touched on it a couple times. It's like you're kind of speechless, but all you can do is just like look at this list of games, look at where they've come from, look at how we've gotten here. And I do just want to like give a shout out. I don't know if any of these guys listen, but like the Sam Greasels, the Derek Walkers, like last year Bryce Williams, Jawan Garrett, like those dudes, the guys that came through, the Casey Tominaga, like obviously you can't forget, but like all those guys that came through this program in the last handful of years and have really like righted the ship after those first 3 years and set this program on the trajectory that it is to be where it is now. like it's obviously you want to celebrate the players on the team now that are doing it because they deserve all the credit, right? But like building the culture and getting this thing to even stop taking on water and then get the ship start bailing out the water and then get the ship pointed in the right direction, suddenly start going in the right, like it's been such an effort over such a long period of time that we can't forget the guys that came first before we got to this point to even just get to 500, right? Because that was a struggle. We talked about earlier about like the 7 and 20 years, the 725, like there were some real ugly years. And so to see the culture change and all those guys that came through and have their own impact, like they deserve some of the credit. This season so far is not just for the players on the team; it's the players that have come in the last handful of years too that put this team in the position to even be where they are now. Again, obviously the players on the current roster, they're the ones putting in the work and doing it day in, day out, and they deserve a ton of credit. But to get this culture right and to get the buy-in, that I think that's where a lot of the successes come from, is the buy-in. We talk about the guys are playing their position, playing their role, and a lot of that comes down to culture, and that's not a single year thing. That's something that takes years and years to build. And again, just can't forget those guys that came first, because this success is as much as theirs as it is this team that's playing right now, I think.
It's so funny you mentioned that because that was something I kind of thought of actually as, the final buzzer hit and you kind of took a moment. And I'm going to be honest, guys, like I had a tear running down my face. The fact that this is real life is just it's incredible where they're at. But when you get through the emotions of it, you kind of try to justify it in your head as to how this happened and how we got to where we're at, just human nature. And Mike just hit the hammer on the head, or hit the nail on the head rather, in that like you go back and you owe so many flowers in hindsight to Sam Griesel, to Emmanuel Bandamel, to young Sam Hoiberg at the time, to Derek Walker, to all those guys on that team that were left for dead. I mean, their season was over in basically the end of January at that point. I couldn't tell you what their record was, but they're probably like 3-13 or something. I mean, they had nothing to play for. But did they stop playing hard? Did they stop giving everything they had? No, I mean they truly transformed this program and laid the foundation for what it is today. We had referred to it, and so has Fred Hoiberg referred to it in miscellaneous pressers over the years, to that team and what they were able to do to end that season. And guys, you take an even more like macro look at that and what they were able to accomplish. If they don't win those couple games in February and March of that year, I think it was 2023. If they don't go on that hot streak to end that year, there's a good chance Fred Hoiberg's not our coach anymore. Like, think about the butterfly effect of where we could be if those guys gave up and didn't continue to give everything they had to this program when there was nothing to play for. I still remember, I'm sure Mike too, when we were looking at NIT bracketology at the end of at the end of the year, like we're praying to get into the NIT. That's where the program was at that point, and we were happy about it. I remember going to Longwell's, now the corner bar, to watch that first round game against Minnesota, when we were trying to get into the NIT. And I remember how heartbreaking of a loss it was, because frankly, it was a relatively bad loss, but because it meant the season was over. And that team was finally starting to build an identity, and you could see the formula of how they were going to win games. And while they didn't get it done, they laid the foundation to 14-0 on January 2nd, 2026. And it's again, I don't know if any of them listen. I don't know if any of them are even aware we exist. But if you guys are out there and you hear this one way or another, thank you so much for turning the program into what it is now. So we added Bode Suckup as a speaker, or Bode Suckup's mustache rather. Bode Suckup is probably coming back from Las Vegas. But we added you as a speaker. So if you want to share your thoughts on the game, just make sure to unmute your mic, and let's hear what you think about, again, tonight's historic win over number 9 Michigan State.
Hey guys, long time listener, first time speaker in the space. First, I want to just thank Tax and Business Consultants for sponsoring the podcast. It's always great to have them as sponsor. I got one thing to say, really. I want to know what, as Husker fans, our expectations should be going into the rest of the season. I mean, we are 14-0. Should I be looking to, get some Final Four tickets at this point? I mean, what should we be looking forward to? Thanks, guys.
I'll let you take this one off the rip, Mike.
Yeah, because you got your mouth full of pizza or something. I heard that.
I was trying to get a snack in real quick, man.
No, I mean, as for expectation, that's a hard question because again, like nobody in their right mind realistically would think we're sitting here at 14-0 when the when or not when the roster when the schedule came out. Yet here we are. You can look at the projections and all that stuff, but like realistically, and Blake and I had talked about this after recording the last episode. We said like if we win this Michigan State game, like realistically, like we can get a top, 5 finish in the Big Ten, and that gets you a really good seed in the NCAA tournament. A 5 seed and up probably. So that's my expectation at this point is a 5 seed and up in the NCAA tournament. That's where my mind always goes to as a Nebraska fan of expectations and goals is to win that game. Obviously, I think anybody in here would dread the 5-12 matchup and maybe prefer, maybe they can drop a bad loss to Maryland or something in February and drop to the 6 seed line just to avoid the 12. But really like expectations, and I even texted a couple of my buddies about this, like get this team to the Sweet 16. Like there's no reason this team can't make the second weekend in March now. Like and that's kind of, I'm not saying like that's the level or else it's a failure of a season, but that's kind of my expectation at this point is that they go in and they make some noise in March, and at that point like you're playing with house money, see how far you can go. But I would not be surprised at all if this team does make it to the Sweet 16 because, and it goes back to, again, I've said it a handful of times, but like this team just finds ways to win. And that's the type of team that just finds ways to keep it going. Like you think about like the Kemba Walker UConn Huskies, like what a run they went on, right? That was a team that just found ways to win. Hopefully we don't have to go on a historic run in the Big Ten tourney to make the tournament like they did, but like this team just matches up well with everybody. We have mismatches. Rink Mass is obviously a mismatch for everybody we play, but we talked about like what Oogie brings to the floor, what Burke, what everybody brings to the floor, and the way the offense flows and how sharp our rotations have been on defense. There's really no reason, again, like you can't expect a top 5 finish in the conference and making the second weekend in the tournament. And that's so funny to say as a Nebraska basketball fan, but truly, I think that's what you could realistically expect from this team from here on out.
Yeah, I'm done eating, so I'll speak now. Sorry about that, fellas. But no, the thing about it is I'm gonna be a little bit of a realistic person here. We always talk about on our full production podcast that like we try to always stay in the middle. We're not too high, not too low. Now that said, tonight is a night of celebration. There's no reason to stop dreaming after what we saw tonight. And I fully understand that. But when you take a step back and you ask yourself, what can we expect from this team? I think the biggest thing that you come to the realization of is that the ceiling has changed, right? Nebraska coming into the season, I think we all thought, maybe if things go right and they go 12-8 in the Big Ten and they hit on these transfers and stuff like that, at the time we were talking, Kendall Blue plays 30 minutes a game. No disrespect to Kendall Blue. Obviously, it hasn't worked out yet. Not to say it can't. But you looked at this team a lot different 2 months ago, obviously, than what they are now. And back then, you just said, the ceiling is probably like a 7 seed. If everything goes right, they can get in as a 7, and then maybe they get the 10, and we can all celebrate. They'll lose to a 2, and it's considered a success. Well, I want to make sure we all understand the goal is still a tournament win. Okay, that part has not changed. One tournament win is and always will be until it happens the goal. But you take that and put it off to the side, and you discredit the idea that they need to win the game, blah, blah, blah. This team, Mike, again, spot on. This team is good enough to make the Sweet 16, and a lot of it depends on seeding and matchups. Everybody talks about it all the time. The March Madness tournament the NCAA tournament is very based on matchups. We played Texas A&M 2 years ago, one of the hottest teams in the country, and we lost because they're much, much more physical than us, and they shot like out of their rear end from 3. It happens. But if this team gets itself a preferable seed, which they're one step closer to now after the big win tonight, they're going to be projected as a 2 seed. It's January, so don't put a ton of stock into it. But just to tell you where this team's at, bracketologists see this team as a top 8 team in the country. And if you are viewed as a top 8 team in the country in brackets, in those kind of things, a Sweet 16 is like the expectation. That's not hopeful. I mean, like you expect to make the Sweet 16 if you're a 2 seed. Like that. I mean, think about it, guys. You're playing a 15, which, knock on wood, Nebraska right now won a game. but you're playing a 15 seed and then you're playing either a 7 or a 10. I mean, like the expectation is to make the Sweet 16 if you're a 2 seed. So, it's what makes this so fun is Nebraska has essentially locked up a bid in the tournament, barring major, major, major catastrophe. But they're playing for seeding now, and it is not even close to being out of the realm of possibility that Nebraska gets a preferential top 4 seed, a top 16 team in the country, and gets geographical preference. And we all know, especially after tonight, how well the Nebraska basketball fans will travel. So if you plan on going to the March Madness game, wherever this may be, I would save a lot of money, not just because it's going to be expensive with the get in price, but because you might need to buy 2 weekends of tickets at the rate that they're at right now. Paul Ruggo, you have been waiting for a long time, so sorry for the wait, but we adding you as a speaker. If looking like you're trying to connect here, hopefully she works out here in a second. Fingers crossed. Maybe. Let me try to. Are you there? Can you speak by chance? Maybe, potentially. Just has a spinning connecting
Yeah, it
button.
looks like he's still connecting. While we wait, not to toot my own horn, but I'm just, being the curious guy I am, wanted to go see what Bart Torvik has for similar tournament resumes after this win. And the first comparison is the 2014 UConn team. So that's kind of funny. But so let's all let that go to our heads because they won the whole thing, right? But hopefully we can get Paul in here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like. Well, I mean, we'll leave it spinning, connecting for now. Hopefully, it ends up working out. But we added Husker Sport something. Husker Sport fan. We've added you as a speaker. Please share your thoughts on tonight's win and how are you celebrating tonight?
Hey, I watched the game with my son tonight, and we were so ecstatic about the win. And then we watched the post game presser, and Rink Mast was like, "Guys, why'd you storm the court? Happy for you, but we should have won this game, and that's awesome." And I'd like to know your thoughts on that. And second, you guys were also saying that you can't find a word to describe the team. Well, I know Kent Pavelka's on this listening. Can we just get another bangarang from the guy? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it really is incredible as far as like the court storming goes. Um, I'm pro court storming. Let the fans have fun as long as it's done in a relatively safe manner. Nobody wants to get trampled. That's not a good thing. Um, but to see the fans celebrate, I think that's always a good thing. I do like what Rink said though in the post game. It's like we're number 13, they were number 9. This was at home. Like we were a betting. He didn't say we were a betting favorite, but like we were supposed to win this game, right? And I think a lot of that touches on what we've already talked about is like where this program has come from, never having a win of this magnitude. It really feels like obviously we've had massive wins at home. You beat number 1 Purdue at PBA. There's no sense Sunday. There's a ton of like big wins we've had, but to rise to the moment, like this was a situation. With those other upsets, it's like Nebraska's a footnote in college basketball, but right now Nebraska is the story of the season in my mind, and frankly, there's a ton of national attention on it. So their eyeballs were absolutely going to be on this game. And I think obviously the players and the coaches and everybody knew that. And to see them rise to the occasion and pull off the win, I think is incredible. And I think it truly is like the biggest game in PBA history. And so I think the fans should celebrate that. But Rink is speaking the truth. Like if we want to be that caliber of team that we want to be, wins like this shouldn't be a court storm. And even Tom Izzo said it in the post game is like they don't storm the court at Michigan State because they've just been good for 3 decades. Like you don't celebrate big wins like that because that's the expectation. So I understand we're not used to this, but hopefully we get to a point in the coming years where if we do beat, a top 10 team at home, it's not even worth a court storm because we should be planning to do that. Maybe not every time, but it's not a miracle for it to happen anymore, right? I think that would be awesome. I like I said, I'm pro court storm, but if we ever get to the point where it's the expectation and the fans don't feel the need to run out and storm the court, I think that's not a bad sign either.
Yeah, to me, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but to me, I view the court storm, at least looking at tonight in a bottle, in a vacuum, that this was the fan base's first chance to celebrate with the team, right? I mean, you look at home wins and you can't really storm the court against Creighton because they were really, really bad at the time. Now they've turned around. They're a much better team now than they were when we played them. You could against Wisconsin, but you beat them by 30, so like everybody kind of knew the game was over. Like the emotion of getting excited about it had kind of already almost settled in by like the mid-second half. But this game, it was in doubt until the final seconds, like literally point 0.7 seconds on the clock with the game on the line. And you know, uh, to me, the players and the team and the leadership on this team views the program and the state of it as much more developed and more ahead of where the fans see it. And that's still an adjustment that I think a lot of the fans are making. But I think it sends the right message in the sense that you know the program has shifted to a point where you should win these home games. This should not be in question. We Mass talks about all the time. They expect to win games. They don't care what the spread is. They don't care what Nebraska basketball history is. They don't care what outside people think about them positively or negatively. They just want to win each and every night, and that is the goal. Again, we talked about it already. They're winners. They don't care about anything else. They just want to win. The chips will fall where the chips will fall at the end of the day in regards to seeding, in regards to Big Ten, in regards to all that. But if you approach it so businesslike, the way that this team does, and again with their maturity and leadership and foundation within the culture of what this team does, if you win every night, every single goal that you want is going to be accomplished. Every single one. Whatever those goals are, it doesn't matter. You win every night, you're going to accomplish your goals. And again, sometimes the simplest answer is the answer. This team wins. Doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter who they're playing, doesn't matter what. They've played poorly against bad teams. They've obviously played electric and fantastic against good teams. It simply doesn't matter. This team wins ball games, and when you're looking at qualities of teams, obviously, I don't think you put anything higher than the fact that they win. They win basketball games. 14-0, number 13, and going to be top 10 here on Monday. Austin Lukemeyer added you as a speaker. What do you think of tonight's game, and where do you think Nebraska is as a program after tonight's 14-0 start to the season, and what they can become?
Well, hey guys, appreciate you having me on. Thanks for doing this live stream. You're getting me back to Kearney just about now, which is just about great. PBA might not be the most iconic venue in the country, but the passion in the seats was undeniable tonight. It was so much fun, even way up in section 319 where we were at. This team is so fun to watch. It was a little frustrating in the second half there when Michigan State was spotted. I think it was about 7 points by the refs. I was a little frustrated with that, but I think that just speaks to the adversity that this team went through tonight, and that's something that we can be really happy with. Um, Maybe the outcome of this game would have been a little bit wider margin had some of those calls went our way, or maybe the whistle would have been in the pocket. But appreciate you guys. Thanks for all that you do.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Thanks, Austin. Glad we could get you home. That's kind of one of the perks of these live streams is we can get people home when you're driving back to Omaha or driving to obviously Kearney or whatever it might be. So, thanks for tuning in. Glad you could check in. And Pinnacle Bank Arena, it's always talked about as an underrated venue and stuff like that. But I go back to what me and Mike talked about in our Michigan State preview episode. We actually clipped it onto our TikTok and all that kind of stuff. But the fan base, and it expands beyond just Nebraska basketball, just the Husker fan base in general bleeds for a winner. It doesn't matter if it's in football. It doesn't matter if it's in volleyball. It doesn't matter. That this fan base just wants winners. And again, you go back to what we just literally just talked about. This Nebraska basketball team, amongst anything else, sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's ugly. They can do it however you want it. This team and this program wins, and that is the identity of this team: is they find a way to win. You can't really pigeonhole them into one specialty. You can't really pigeonhole them into one specific attribute. They just win, and that's what this team does. And Pinnacle Bank Arena, at least tonight for damn sure, was a huge factor in getting Nebraska across the finish line here. And again, everything, I shouldn't say everything, but a lot of things went against this team when you look at just the situations of how everything kind of happened, right? Price Hanford picks up his early fouls, only ends up playing 20 some odd minutes in this game. Nebraska fought, I think they led by 9 before, as Austin just mentioned, that big run that Michigan State had to eventually take the lead. They led by 3 there late in that game, I think under the 4-minute mark before Mast hit what was essentially at this point the shot of his career to take a 3-point lead. But going back to the point, Pinnacle Bank Arena has ignited this team to where it's been at. You look at the home win over Wisconsin, you look at the home win over Creighton, you look at obviously all the bye game wins where Nebraska is selling out games against North Dakota. I mean, like the crowd and the fan base has absorbed and taken ownership of and celebrated and cried and been heartbroken with this team, especially the diehards, for years now. And again, you talk about the court storming, and the fan base just wanted to celebrate with the team, in my eyes. And sometimes I think we get lost in the portal, and we get lost in the the microcosms of it, in the individual wins, the individual losses. But when this really all comes down to it, it's about celebrating with the fan base at the end of the day. And that's what sports are. They're entertainment. And what we saw tonight was kind of the bursting of a bubble of what this fan base has been yearning for the better part of, based on the AP poll, the better part of 60 years.
I can't speak to PBA for this one in particular. I can speak to it over the plenty of games that I've gone, and it's always been a good excuse me. It's always been a good arena. Like the fans get up, the fans get excited. Obviously some of those worst teams that we've had, some of those poorer teams, some of those I guess I don't know what word I'm looking for, but some of those previous teams, let's just go that way. It was a little harder to cheer for them, and obviously, like Blake said, Husker fans in general, love a winner, and I think that's not unique to Husker fans. Everybody loves a winner, but the way this fan base comes out and supports, like Blake just said, like these bye games. Fred said it in the post game presser. I think I already touched on, like, everyone wants to touch on the environment here in this one, but like the environment against New Hampshire, the environment against North Dakota, like the fans have been wanting for so long for something good to come out of men's basketball, and to see that happen is awesome. As far as like that second half, I was freaking out in my living room. Huskers went on a 10-0 run to take a 9-point lead, like Blake said, and then with like 9 minutes left, and then Michigan State obviously clawed back a lot of that at the free throw line, and took that 3-point lead. But then, and I touched on it a little bit before, like this team is just so veteran that they punch back. In fact, you can look at the win probability. The minimum win probability for Nebraska was like 26% at like 4 minutes when Michigan State had that 3-point lead. Like that's a hard game to win, but they find a way to do it. Whether it's a miracle shot by Jamarcus Lawrence in Champaign, or Rink Mass hitting his first 3 in the second half when we need it the most against Michigan State in this one. It goes back to what we kind of touched on. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like, we got 7, 8 guys in the rotation that are willing to take that shot, that are willing to make the pass to get the guy the shot that we need. There's nobody selfish on this team. Everyone just wants to win. And at the end of the day, that's what they keep doing. And I see no reason why it can't keep rolling forward. And I've touched on it a couple times now. Like, obviously, I think this turnaround for Ohio State is going to be hard. 2 days travel. They play on Monday. We have a lot of guys that played a lot of minutes, but again, you trust these guys. They know their bodies. They know what they need, and if they can get right, we've seen them win in slogs. We've seen them win in all sorts of fashion. So no reason to start doubting them now. They absolutely can pull it off come Monday, but absolutely celebrate this one tonight, because it really is. I don't want to say program defining, but this was, I think, unquestionably the biggest win in PBA history, maybe home Nebraska men's basketball history. I'm not old enough to know some of those '90s teams, but yeah, like just what a day it is. It's here at almost 12:30 a.m. now, and I still am not sure I'm going to be able to go to sleep in the next hour just because what this means to the fan base, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that feeling. So, um, we can get to our next. Or I'm kind of rambling. We can get on to our next one, Blake.
Yeah, who needs dreams when you can live them out on nights like this, right? Who needs to go to bed when you just lived your dream, right? Okay, so we've got three people requested, so I'm actually just gonna go bang, 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 one, two, three, clean this up, and then God, we've been going for north of an hour already. Well, now we have four people, so we're gonna get through all these back to back to back to back. We'll kind of share our thoughts, then we'll get out of here. So we'll start with no coverage here. Let me add him as a speaker. Okay, no coverage. You've been added. What'd you think of tonight's win, and how much does this thing mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Sorry, I'm kind of late to the conversation. Just got home. I think Pinnacle Bank Arena was insane. I mean, I was there kind of in the first bowl, and I could not hear the whistle for the majority of the game. And I think the crowd obviously played an impact in the last free throw sequence, which honestly won the game. So just super proud of the Huskers. Super happy, and can't wait for the future. And so I just think this is kind of the pinnacle for Husker fans. We can be involved in the game. We can make an impact. I know a lot of us go to Husker football games, and it kind of just seems like we're there for the pomp and circumstance. And so to go to a Pinnacle Bank Arena game and make an impact, it's pretty fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's really fun to be welcoming, people that maybe haven't followed the team as religiously, because I think this team is helping the casuals. And I don't like to define them as that because you don't want to, obviously, Nebraska basketball needs all the fans they can get, so you don't want to talk negatively about anybody. But the people that maybe haven't been here through all the hard times, that they get to experience what the peak of this program can be if it gets the support, if it gets the right players, if it gets the financial backing, and you're showing the potential, the unrealized potential of it. Nobody has ever seen Nebraska off to this start that they've been in literally the entirety of the program history. So I think the best part of it is just the fact that, again, the people that haven't followed it religiously can see what this team can become. Okay, Freud Hoiberg, you've been added as a speaker. What do you think about tonight's game? Let's hear your thoughts. Just make sure to unmute your mic.
Well, I assume that's me because my notification just came on. I'd just like to say that you covered my main point, which was looking back to that 16-16 season, where how we ended literally saved how Hoiberg has a job and that we're even here now. But I'd like to point out that I've only worn your free swag Scarlet Shoot Around sweatshirt twice, and that's been the Illinois game and tonight. So I should probably save that for special occasions, right? Go Big Red. That's it.
I gotta love, oddly enough, you never want to take ownership for stuff like this, Mike, because we're no bigger than anybody else and we never act like we are and we never want to be. We're just fans, man. That's what we do. But these are the moments we wanted to share with you. But it is very funny, the parallels of when we started to a lot of the success that this team has had. And when we started this thing, Mike, Nebraska was predicted to be like, I mean, 13th out of 14 in the Big Ten or something. Like they weren't supposed to do anything. And then they went on, obviously, the magical run into the tournament. So, we haven't really experienced hard times as a podcast yet, and hopefully we never do. But the parallels between us starting up and having the success that we've had is quite literally unbelievable and nearly unfathomable. But Freud, just please don't ever, ever, ever wash that sweatshirt, because whatever you have going on with the tricks and whatever the voodoo you have happening, it's working. So don't change the process, please.
Yeah, all I would say is maybe save the next wear for Tuesday, January 27th against Michigan, because I think the Huskers might need all the help they can get in that one, based off what I've seen from the Wolverines so far this year.
Okay, last speaker, Cornhay Jose. That's quite the name right there. You've been added as a speaker. What'd you think about the game tonight?
Guys, I just have one request. When you close the podcast tonight,
Can you play Sandstorm? Peace.
No, how good is that? Actually, someone texted me. This is really interesting. Somebody texted me that they were at. I think it was N Club. What the hell is that bar called? Mike, help me out. The End Zone, I think is what it's called. The
You're asking
Underground.
the wrong guy, but
I think it was the End Zone. It's the one that's like opposite Gate 25, just to the east. And they texted me and they said they're playing Sandstorm pregame at End Zone. And like what? But and this will be one of the very very few humble brags that we will ever do. For those that have been following us for a long time, we entered that 2023-24 season when they made the tournament, and they, for whatever reason, they had been playing the Sandstorm after the post run timeout sequence when the opposing team calls timeout. They had been doing that for as long as I even ever remember, at least at Pinnacle Bank Arena. And in that 23-24 season, they stopped doing it. And nobody really had a reason why. Nobody understood why it was happening. But one of our first, and really, frankly, only claims to fame is that we put together like this pre-typed out email for people to copy and paste and send to the directors of fan experience for men's basketball to bring that tradition back with like a live clip from a Kansas game in the 20, I think it was the 18-19 season maybe, when Steve Mikhailou hit the three. And we don't got to get into all that, but we put together this copy paste email to send to the fan experience people at Nebraska. And then I think if I'm not mistaken, Mike, I think it was the big Wisconsin home game when we beat, I don't know, they were number 8 or 9 or whatever it was in that 23-24 season. When I was actually courtside that game, you were up in the lower bowl, and Nebraska, they got on a run. Greg Gard called a timeout, and they played Sandstorm for the first time that year out of a break. And I remember looking up and finding you and jumping and just and yelling, "They did it! They actually did it! They're playing it!" And that was like a nirvana moment of like, oh my god, like we actually did something. But anyways, no, regardless, Sandstorm is such a great a cool little tradition that Nebraska now has. And I don't know if we can necessarily take any credit for that or whatever, but it is one of our favorite things about the program, and at least from the fan experience side. So it's that we hold that one close to our heart, that's for sure.
yeah, it's really cool, like you said, to get people texting you about it. And then I know I've seen it plenty of times now. Like people will tweet at us like "Sandstorm Run" like when it happens. And it is cool. Like that was, I mean, that's crazy to think that's been a couple of years now. Wild how time flies, and just to like again, it's not about me and Blake in particular. It's about this little community, this little group that we've kind of built, and everyone reaching out and making their impact on the fan experience and being able to latch on to Sandstorm and have it kind of be our thing. I think that's something really cool. Um, just want to touch again one more time on like PBA and speaking of the fan experience, like it's so awesome to have people call in or tweet or whatever and talk about how awesome PBA was, because Blake, you and I talk about it all the time. It's like, and we are the type of guys that are like, we're going to get involved in this game, but to know it's not just us, and to have plenty of other people who want to have and make an impact and have their voices heard, pun intended, but make an impact on the game. And you're right. Like you get down in those lower levels, you get courtside, and when the crowd is at full throat, you cannot hear anything. And people may think like it doesn't make that big of a difference, but you tell me how easy it would be to get into a set and get your guys lined up and run a play as an opposing team when you can't hear anything, and you have to dribble the ball and you're trying to it's not like college football where you can use your hands as a quarterback to signal. Like it's so hard to make that happen, and it truly is a very unique experience to be able to have an impact like that. And I think that's very unique to basketball. Like I said, obviously college football you can get false starts and whatever, but it is very very cool to like possession after possession after possession be able to have that impact and have a group that we do now. Obviously, I think a lot of the people listening are probably the same type of guys that me and Blake are, where we are going to be full throat, we're going to be very loud and try to keep the crowd in it, because you hear it from, we always say it, but then you hear it from Fred, you hear it from the players. Like the crowd truly does make a difference, and in a game that comes down to 2 points, like you can chalk that up to missed free throws. You can chalk that up to whatever you want. But at the end of the day, I think the crowd did absolutely have an impact on the game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've kind of talked about it almost at extent to this point, but I will tell you 100% the crowd was the difference tonight. When you look at the defensive battle that was 58-56, you look at how crowds can affect games, and there is no doubt 110 million% that the Husker crowd willed Nebraska's defense to the finish line here. Again, you look in a jar at just at what Michigan State is. Post this game, I don't even have the stats before this game. I could look them up, but I mean, they were 57th offensively in adjusted efficiency in the country. That was after tonight, where they scored a season low or 56 points against Nebraska. Their lowest other output was Duke, where they scored 60. So, like, what Nebraska did to Michigan State is something they have not seen this year. And what's the X factor? I mentioned on the podcast when I made my pick, the PBA crowd, right? I mean, like that is what this team feeds off of, especially at home. And I to anybody that was at the game and those who were yelling at your TVs, tip your hat to yourself, because you guys were the difference that got this thing over the finish line and now has Nebraska in position to, have an advantage seat as we head into March Madness. And it's hard to say that it's reality, but that's truly, again, it's you can't find a word for it. It's beyond a dream. It's beyond fathomable. It's beyond anyone's wildest imagination. But Nebraska is 14-0, going to be a top 10 team on Monday, and have two quad 1A wins to their name already as we head into the first week of January. It's truly unbelievable. But Mike, let's wrap this thing up. Any closing thoughts on the way out as we shut this thing down?
Yeah, I'd say savor it. Like this is what we've all been hoping for. While I have the mic real quick, I do want to give a shout out. You just mentioned the people yelling at their TVs in their living room. That was me tonight, so I want to give a shout out to my wife who made me a absolutely fantastic Moscow Mule and put up with me walking around and pacing for the last 4 minutes of game time, which was realistically like 15 minutes real time, and on my hands and knees and yelling and celebrating a missed free throw harder than I think I've ever celebrated a missed free throw in my life. So just want to give her a shout out for putting up with my crazy ass when it comes to Husker hoops.
Yeah, I was with 15,000 of my favorite friends at Pinnacle Bank Arena, and this is one of those where it doesn't matter if you know the guy, it doesn't matter if you know the girl, it doesn't matter their age. You just turn around and high five people, and you hug people, and you celebrate, and you're just, it doesn't matter. Like this is something that transcends any kind of social norm when things like this happen. When programs break down barriers like Nebraska basketball did tonight, you don't need to know the person next to you to hug them, because they get it, because they've been through the same struggle that you've been, especially the ones that have been here for years and years and years. So I'm so happy the fan base got to experience one like this. I'm so happy that thankfully we have a community that even cares what we're talking about. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Me and Mike did this 3 years ago. We just said screw it, and this has been such a fun ride, and into what this thing has kind of turned into. And it's we're just so thankful. Nights like this, you're just thankful for Rink Mast for coming back, for Sam Hoiberg to develop into the player he's at, for Jamarcus Lawrence to return after a 1 year hiatus, for Braden Frager to choose to trust in this program out of high school, and after a full redshirt year to stick with it and become the player he's become, and for Burke Buchtengel to take the personal sacrifice to get his body into game shape and be the dominating force that he's been this year. I could name every single player up and down the roster, but the fact of the matter is that this is a night where you're just thankful, and you never want go to bed, but I'll say it again: who needs dreams when you can live them out in real time, right? So, the sun's going to be extra bright tomorrow when you wake up. Twitter's going to be exploding with celebration, and it's going to be really fun hitting like on every single tweet that says Nebraska basketball. So, looking forward to that. But to round this out, Cornet, Jose, we would love to play Sandstorm, but we're very careful about copyrights now that we're starting to get, screened a little bit more for that kind of stuff. So we're not going to be playing Sandstorm on the way out, but we will make sure to have some sort of special introduction built for tomorrow. Well, I guess it won't be out tomorrow. It'll be out. What is today? Saturday. It'll be out Monday, most likely Monday morning. Our true episode for previewing Ohio State, but we'll put together something special as we always do for big moments. I'm running out of uncopyrighted songs to even keep this thing going, because we've had to make like 5 of them already, which is a great blessing to have, obviously. But um, yeah, just amazing night. So happy all the fans got to experience it. So happy for the players. So happy for everybody that is involved with this program, from fans to administrative staff to players to coaches to everything. And thank you all for taking the time. Some of you have been here in here since we started this thing over an hour ago. So thank you so much for listening. If you've never heard of us and you're in here and you want to follow along with us, you can obviously follow us on Twitter here at Scarlet Shoot Pod. We're very interactive. We do all kinds of stuff that follows the team and program, tweeting about them and bracketology and players and injuries and outlooks and all that kind of stuff. So if you like that kind of thing and you're a diehard fan, make sure to hit follow. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. We started doing more TikTok stuff if that's your kind of thing. So posting short form videos of our long episodes. If that's your thing, that's at Scarlet Shoe Pod as well. Last but not least, Freud Hoiberg mentioned he got a sweatshirt. If you want to go look at the merchandise stuff that we have, just visit us online at scarletshootground.com. We post game stories on there, travel blogs, which again I talked about. We'll be going to Indiana to cover that game from Media Row, so super excited about that one. We've got obviously our merch store up there if you want to wear some swag, either hats or shirts or whatever. And if you haven't already, make sure to respond with your in-text thoughts to our post-game tweet, which is pinned to the top of our profile for a chance at a free sweatshirt as we go here into Ohio State coming up very soon here in a couple days. So thank you all for joining in with us. What a special night. I hope you celebrate. I hope you celebrate however you're comfortable with tonight, and soak this in, because this has been a long time coming for a lot of us fans. So that's all we got. Thanks for listening. And Mike, as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby. There you go. That's your non-copyright version.